She walked onto the plane in silence, poised, polished, and dressed like the boss she was. But before Camille Jordan could even buckle her seatbelt, she was told she didn't belong in first class. The flight attendant didn't ask questions, didn't check the manifest, just assumed that a black woman in a power suit couldn't possibly have a seat in row 1A. Told to move to the back like it was routine. But what no one on that plane realized was that Camille wasn't just any passenger. She was the CEO of the very airline they were flying. And within minutes, she would quietly trigger a chain of events that would bring the entire flight to a standstill, ground the plane before takeoff, and leave one arrogant pilot out of a job. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about respect, identity, and the power of staying composed when you hold all the cards. What happened next would shock everyone on board, and become a viral moment no one saw coming. Camille Jordan stepped onto Flight 820 with the grace of someone who had mastered the art of being underestimated. She wore a tailored navy blue suit that spoke of quiet luxury, her natural curls pinned into an elegant bun that framed her high cheekbones. A designer leather briefcase hung from her shoulder, and in her hand she held her boarding pass. Seat 1A. First class, right where she belonged. The flight was nearly full as she made her way down the jet bridge and stepped into the cabin, nodding politely to the flight attendants who greeted her with rehearsed smiles. But when she approached her seat, a sharply dressed flight attendant with a tight bun and a colder expression suddenly stepped in front of her. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the attendant said firmly, extending a hand like a barrier. "This section is reserved." Camille blinked. Reserved? The attendant didn't budge. "Yes, first class is full. You'll need to check with gate staff about your seating assignment." Camille tilted her head slightly, keeping her voice calm. "I'm not mistaken. I have seat 1A. She raised her boarding pass for the attendant to see. The woman glanced at it briefly, then waved a hand dismissively. "That can't be right. You probably belong in economy. These things happen all the time, glitches in the system. Let me have someone check your boarding pass again." Behind her, a man lounging in seat 1B chuckled under his breath. He leaned toward the blonde woman beside him and muttered, "They always try it, don't they?" The woman smirked, not bothering to hide it. Camille heard every word but didn't flinch. Years of experience had taught her that grace under pressure was more powerful than any outburst. She tucked her boarding pass back into her blazer pocket and spoke slowly. "I purchased this ticket weeks ago, full fare, non-refundable, and very much valid. I suggest you verify the manifest again, properly this time." The attendant's smile thinned, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned and disappeared into the galley. Camille stood there alone at the front of the cabin, the eyes of several first-class passengers trailing her every move. A few looked away quickly when she met their gaze, while others stared openly, their assumptions laid bare in their silence. She was used to it by now, the looks, the disbelief, the subtle discomfort people felt when someone like her walked into a space they didn't think she belonged. A full 5 minutes passed before the flight attendant returned, this time with a more forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "There's been a mistake in the system," she said, her tone now overly sweet. "I'm going to have to ask you to wait at the back while we sort this out. Someone may have double booked that seat." Camille didn't move. She looked the woman directly in the eye. "So now it's a double booking." The attendant hesitated, then nodded quickly. "Yes, just a technical issue." Camille stared for another moment, then exhaled slowly. She took a step back and moved out of the aisle, allowing the other first-class passengers to settle in. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. But behind her composed exterior, her mind was already processing everything. The way the attendant hadn't checked properly, the way the passengers had laughed, and the fact that she, Camille Jordan, wasn't just a frequent flyer. She was the interim CEO of Hawk Air International, the very company that operated Flight 820. And 60% of its board answered directly to her, but for now she let it go. She walked calmly down the aisle toward Coach, her heels clicking softly on the carpet, each step deliberate. Passengers turned to glance at her as she passed, perhaps assuming she was just another overbooked traveler or someone who tried to upgrade herself into a seat she hadn't paid for. She found an open middle seat near the back of the aircraft, slid into it, and gently set her briefcase beneath the seat in front of her. She pulled out her phone and opened a secure app reserved for executive leadership, a portal not even the airline staff knew existed. She tapped through the passenger manifest. There it was. Seat 1A, Camille Jordan confirmed, no double booking. No system error, she smiled just barely. Camille Jordan wasn't in the business of revenge. She was in the business of accountability. And 5 minutes from now, this flight, and everyone on it, was going to learn the difference. Camille sat rigid in the narrow coach seat, her knees brushing the seat in front of her, her arms drawn inward to avoid touching the passengers on either side. The man to her left had already claimed the shared armrest, while the woman to her right was snacking noisily on a bag of pretzels. Neither of them gave her more than a passing glance. To them, she was just another tired traveler stuck in the cattle section. But Camille Jordan didn't mind being invisible, not when she was observing, watching. Up front, the first-class curtain swayed gently with the movement of the aircraft crew. From time to time, she caught glimpses of the flight attendants peeking through, casting cautious looks toward the rear cabin. Toward her, their gazes didn't linger, but Camille noticed the shift in energy, the stiff backs, the hushed conversations near the galley, the way one of them gestured subtly in her direction, before turning away when she locked eyes with them. Still, none approached, no apology, no explanation, not even a pretense of customer service. 15 minutes passed. Then 30, still nothing. She pulled her phone from her blazer pocket and unlocked it with a quick fingerprint scan. A notification blinked at the top of her screen, one new message. Maya Assistant, Maya, everything ready for the merger announcement. Hope the flight's smooth, you'll be great on stage. Grinning face with smiling eyes, Camille stared at the message for a moment. Then she smiled faintly and began typing a reply before stopping mid-sentence. No need. Maya didn't need to know what was happening, not yet. She'd find out soon enough. Instead, Camille opened a hidden folder on her phone and launched an app simply labeled Hawk Exec. The screen flickered once, then loaded a clean, black interface. Most Hawk Air employees didn't even know this app existed. It was custom, built for senior executives and board-level personnel. With a few swipes, Camille accessed the flight dashboard. Flight 820, Atlanta to New York, passenger manifest 116 aboard. She scrolled through the list. Her name appeared exactly where it should have. Jordan Camille, seat 1A. VIP verified, flag, executive-level clearance. There it was, in black and white. Not only had the crew ignored the manifest, they had willfully overridden it. No technical glitch, no system error, just assumption and bias. Camille stared at the screen for a moment longer, then tapped the gold icon in the bottom corner of the app. A menu expanded with only 3 options. Flight performance, staff metrics, incident reporting. She selected the third option. A prompt appeared, submit internal alert. What level of incident is this? Below that, 3 buttons, yellow operational concern, orange security, /discrimination, issue red execute. If level escalation, her finger hovered over the options for a moment. This wasn't just a rude crew member or an accidental oversight. This was systemic, deliberate, the kind of thing that could ripple across departments if left unchecked. She pressed red. The screen flashed with a new message, level red alert submitted. Onboard operations control will be notified. Executive oversight will be initiated within 5 minutes. Stand by for protocol. Enforcement. She slipped her phone back into her blazer, leaned her head against the cool window, and closed her eyes. Not to sleep, but to think. Just then, the man beside her adjusted his position and bumped her elbow. Sorry, he mumbled without looking. She gave a tight-lipped smile, then glanced again at the front of the plane. The first-class curtain had closed completely now, as if to block her out of sight and out of mind. But it was too late for that. Camille wasn't interested in shouting or demanding recognition. That wasn't her style. Her authority didn't come from volume. It came from structure. From knowing that the people who had just insulted her were now being watched. evaluated, and flagged in real time. Because when you sit quietly and listen, people reveal exactly who they are. And once the system caught up to the moment, it would be too late for fake apologies and forced smiles. Camille looked out the window again. It wouldn't be long now. 5 minutes after Camille tapped the red button on her executive app, the change began. The hum of the engines, the clinking of seatbelts, and the rustling of boarding passes were suddenly overshadowed by a crackle over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pilot's voice began, smooth and confident, "this is your captain speaking. We've been advised of a slight delay due to some mild weather over the mid-Atlantic. Nothing to worry about. We should be in the air shortly." A few groans sounded throughout the cabin. Passengers glanced at their phones, checking the time. A woman in 23C muttered something about missing her connection in Newark. It all seemed routine until it wasn't. Midway through the captain's sentence, another voice cut through the speaker system. This one was sharp, clear, and unmistakably authoritative. "This is Tower Command. Flight 820, you are instructed to hold all departures and suspend boarding immediately. Stand by for security clearance and protocol verification." The entire plane seemed to freeze. Seatbacks creaked as passengers straightened. Conversation stopped mid-word. Even the toddler in row 17 went silent as tension settled over the cabin like a heavy fog. A young man across the aisle looked around nervously. Did they just say security clearance? In first class, the man in 1B, the one who'd chuckled earlier at Camille's expense, sat upright. He exchanged a look with his seatmate, confusion clouding his smug expression. At the front of the plane, a flight attendant, the same one who had blocked Camille from her seat, fumbled with her tablet. Her face went pale as she read something on the screen. Slowly, cautiously, she turned and looked down the aisle. Her gaze landed on Camille. It was like watching a puzzle piece snap into place. The attendant's expression shifted from confusion to realization, then panic. Camille, still seated in coach, met her eyes calmly. Then, without hurry, she unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. Her movements were smooth, elegant. She retrieved her briefcase, adjusted the collar of her blazer, and began walking forward. Every eye followed her. Each step was deliberate, echoing faintly in the silence. The rows seemed to part around her, passengers turning their heads as she passed, sensing that something important was happening but not quite understanding it. She reached the front of the aircraft and stood before the stunned flight attendant who had denied her earlier. The woman's mouth opened but no words came out. Camille looked her in the eye and asked softly but clearly, "Do you know who I am?" The attendant's lips trembled. I didn't know. There was confusion, I swear." Camille didn't raise her voice, didn't let her tone grow cold. But her words carried the weight of power, dignity, and quiet fury. "I'm Camille Jordan, interim CEO of Hawk Air International, the company that operates this aircraft along with 23 others around the world." A gasp escaped someone behind her. Another passenger pulled out their phone, recording quietly. "You've made 2 serious mistakes today," Camille continued. "1 assuming and 2 disrespecting." The attendant stepped back, stammering, I thought." Camille didn't flinch. "You didn't think at all, that's the problem." Just then, the cockpit door opened with a click, and the captain stepped into the aisle. He was tall, older, with silver in his hair, and the calm demeanor of someone who thought he'd seen it all. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone clipped. Camille turned toward him slowly. "Yes," she replied. "There's a problem with your leadership." The captain blinked. "Excuse me." "You failed to follow verification protocols. You boarded passengers without resolving a manifest discrepancy, ignored a red flag on a corporate executive's profile, and falsely announced a weather delay when none was reported by Tower." The captain's jaw tightened. "I wasn't informed of any of that." "Exactly," Camille said. "And that's the third mistake, lack of awareness at the highest level. You're responsible for this aircraft, this crew, and every person on board. But you weren't even aware your own CEO was being humiliated in coach." He opened his mouth to speak, but a sharp ping came from the cockpit. The co-pilot's voice crackled over the speaker. "Captain, Control has requested immediate clearance of the aircraft. They've initiated override authority from corporate headquarters." The color drained from the captain's face. Camille turned to the stunned flight crew and said calmly, "I suggest you open the door. This flight is no longer cleared for takeoff until further notice." And with that, she stepped aside, letting the weight of her words and the silence she left behind speak louder than any raised voice ever could. The cabin door clicked shut behind Camille as she stepped into the cockpit, her heels striking the floor with quiet certainty. She didn't wait for permission, she didn't need it. Captain Miller, a silver-haired man with lines of experience etched into his face, turned in his seat, clearly startled. "What's going on, ma'am? You can't just walk in here. This area is restricted." Camille didn't flinch. "I can, and I did," she said evenly. Her voice didn't rise, but the weight behind her words shifted the air in the small cockpit. The co-pilot stiffened slightly, glancing between Camille and Miller, as if sensing the storm forming in the confined space. She stepped fully inside and faced the captain head-on. "Captain Miller." She began, enunciating each word with deliberate precision. "I just received an internal report. It confirms that you authorized changes to the seating arrangement without corporate clearance. That you allowed a senior executive to be downgraded without cause, and made inappropriate, discriminatory comments during the manifest review process." Miller's face turned a shade darker, then redder still. "That's ridiculous. I was just following procedure. The manifest looked wrong. It's not on me to question everything." Camille raised a brow, unfazed. "Your job isn't to question the manifest, it's to follow it, especially when it comes with a red level clearance tag and an internal marker for executive priority." Miller looked away, his jaw tightening. "You people are always trying to," he stopped mid-sentence, realizing his mistake too late. Camille didn't even blink. "You people," she repeated softly. "That's exactly what I thought." The co-pilot shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but said nothing. Camille pulled a small silver device from her inner blazer pocket, her executive ID badge. She held it up so both pilots could see the embedded holographic seal. "I'm Camille Jordan, interim CEO of Hawk Air International. As of 5 minutes ago, this aircraft has been grounded. Flight 820 is officially under executive review, and you, Captain Miller, are relieved of duty, effective immediately." Miller gaped at her. You can't be serious. I've been with this company for 27 years. Camille remained calm. "Exactly, and you should know by now that tenure doesn't excuse misconduct." A tense silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the aircraft systems. Outside the cockpit window, the jet bridge had been reattached, and the boarding door swung open once more. But this time it wasn't to welcome more passengers, it was for removal. Camille pressed her earpiece. "Security, send someone in. We are no longer in compliance for departure. Flight 820 is suspended until a full investigation is complete. Confirm Captain Miller's removal." "Confirmed." A voice replied instantly, approaching now. Just moments later, the front curtain parted and 2 uniformed members of Hawk Air's internal security team stepped into the cabin, calm and composed. Their dark suits bore the subtle insignia of corporate enforcement, only used in situations like this. Passengers craned their necks, murmuring. A few raised their phones. The flight attendant who had dismissed Camille earlier was frozen in place, her face drained of color. Behind her, murmurs erupted in first class. Even the man in 1B, who'd smirked earlier, looked as if someone had punched the wind out of him. Captain Miller stood up slowly, puffing out his chest as if to reclaim authority. "This is outrageous," he barked. "I've never been treated like this." "Then perhaps it's overdue," Camille said coolly. The guards didn't touch him, but their presence was firm. Miller's bluster faltered as he looked between them and Camille, finally registering that this wasn't just a performance. He stepped out of the cockpit. As he walked past the passengers, escorted down the aisle, conversation stopped. Eyes widened. One woman whispered, "Is that the pilot?" Another man muttered, "What did he do?" Camille stepped out behind him, calm and poised, walking like a woman who had just redefined the balance of power in midair. As Miller disappeared through the boarding door, Camille turned to the lead security officer. "I'll be taking over the manifest for this flight. Let's ensure the remaining crew complies." "Understood," he nodded. The cabin remained silent, heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Camille scanned the faces in the aisle, some stunned, some relieved, and others suddenly aware that the woman they had dismissed was the one in control all along. She nodded once and returned to the front of the plane. The message had been received, loud and clear. 20 minutes later, the cabin door opened again, but this time it wasn't for conflict. A new pilot, calm and professional, entered the aircraft with a quiet confidence that immediately changed the air. He nodded respectfully to Camille as he passed. "MS Jordan," he said with a small smile, "welcome aboard. We're honored to have you flying with us today." Camille nodded in return, offering a smile of her own. "Thank you, Captain Alvarez. Let's have a smooth flight." With the former captain escorted off the plane and the crew reset, the energy on Flight 820 had shifted dramatically. Gone was the air of smugness and indifference that had cloaked the first-class cabin. In its place, silence, humility, and a buzzing current of awareness. Camille returned to her rightful seat in 1A, setting her briefcase down with quiet precision. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply sat with the same grace she had carried since the moment she stepped on board. Only now everyone understood the weight she carried with her. Before the aircraft taxied to the runway, Camille unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. The cabin crew turned toward her in surprise. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "before we take off, I want to share something with you all." Every passenger turned. Phones slowly came out. Not to mock or record in secret this time, but to listen, to witness. "I know many of you saw what happened today. Some of you looked away. Some of you laughed, and a few of you watched silently, unsure of what to make of it all." She paused, letting the weight of her words fill the space. "But let this be a reminder you never know who's sitting next to you, and more importantly, courtesy should never depend on someone's color, gender, wardrobe, or perceived status. Every person who steps onto an airplane deserves basic human respect." The silence was heavy but not tense reflective. "In my position, I often deal with billion-dollar decisions, but today's lesson was worth more than any contract. Power doesn't always need a raised voice. Sometimes it just needs someone willing to stand when everyone else stays seated." She sat back down. No applause followed, not because the message didn't land, but because everyone was too stunned, too introspective, to respond with anything more than stillness. As the plane ascended into the clouds, Camille pulled out her laptop, connected to the onboard satellite network, and joined a virtual board meeting in progress. Her face lit up the screen. "Apologies for the delay," she said with a smile. "Let's begin the acquisition review." The board members greeted her warmly, all aware, through real-time alerts and internal channels, of what had unfolded just an hour earlier. By the time Flight 820 touched down in New York, the story had already exploded across the internet. A passenger in economy had posted a short clip of Captain Miller being escorted off the aircraft. Another had captured Camille's calm confrontation with the crew. A third had recorded her mid-air speech and uploaded it to social media with the caption, "This woman just taught a masterclass in quiet power. #Camille Jordan #Flight 820. Within an hour, her name was trending in over a dozen countries. CEO Camille Jordan reminds the world what leadership looks like. Black woman in coach, not quite. She owns the airline. She didn't yell. She didn't fight. She just grounded the plane and fired the pilot. News outlets picked it up. Commentators praised her. Civil rights leaders and corporate watchdogs called it a watershed moment in travel culture. But Camille didn't bask in the attention. Instead, when she arrived at Hawk Air's Manhattan headquarters, she called an emergency meeting with Human Resources and the Diversity and Ethics Division. Within 24 hours, a new airline-wide training program was implemented, signed into policy by Camille herself. It included modules on unconscious bias, customer respect protocols, and executive passenger identification. Every employee, from baggage handlers to senior pilots, was required to complete it within 30 days. She named it the First Class Respect Initiative. Later that evening, as she looked out over the city skyline from her office, Maya, her loyal assistant, entered with a fresh press packet and a latte. "You didn't just fire a pilot today," Maya said, smiling. "You made history." Camille turned, her eyes thoughtful. "I didn't set out to make history," she replied softly. "I just wanted my seat." Then, after a beat, she added with quiet resolve, "and to make sure no one else ever has to fight for theirs again." What began as a simple boarding error turned out to be a powerful reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that real power doesn't always announce itself with a loud voice. Camille Jordan's quiet strength, sharp intelligence, and calm command didn't just reclaim her seat. They exposed deeper flaws in the system and demanded change from the top down. By the time the plane touched down, it wasn't just another flight story. It became a symbol, a warning to those who judge by appearance, and a beacon to those who carry themselves with quiet dignity. And there you have it. One moment of disrespect turned into a lesson the entire airline industry won't forget. Camille Jordan didn't just reclaim her seat, she reclaimed the narrative. Back and index pointing right. What would you have done in her place? Let us know in the comments. If you were inspired by this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful tale from hidden realities. Airplane departure. Until next time, remember, true power doesn't need to shout. It just takes its rightful place.